10 to 2. And they started torturing me again. Search position, arms spread, standing on your tiptoes. Young policewomen coming in, being encouraged to grab my testicles and twist them, to spit in my mouth, battering me. And when I fell to the floor, they'd be trailing me round the little room by the hair, telling me that they could kill me. They actually took me out. They actually took me out on the Tuesday night from Godalming hooded. They took me to a little country lane and they forced me out of the car. They forced me to my knees and they took the hood off and put a gun in my mouth and told me to make my peace with God and cocked the hammer and pulled the trigger and I wet myself, pissed myself. I mean, what they did to us was incredible. And little did I know that while all this was going on, my father had went to the station I had been held in Belfast and had spoke to members of Scotland Yard, the bomb squad. And they told him to come over, that he would have access to me, that he would be able to pick a solicitor to provide me with legal representation. My father arrived the cheapest way he could. My father had worked at the shipyards and he developed emphysema through having no health and safety. He was red-leading ships in the early 50s. All my life, all I've ever known is my father in and out of sanatoriums. He couldn't walk to the bar without stopping 2 or 3 times. But he made this incredible journey for me. And when he arrived, he first of all went to my Uncle Hugh's house. But little did he know that my Uncle Hugh had actually been arrested before me. So he went to my Aunt Annie's house and my Uncle Paddy's house. And he was there 3 hours, and his little suitcase was sitting on the floor when the police raided it. And this was a family, an Irish family from Belfast, who'd embraced the British way of life. My Uncle Paddy had fought for the British Army. My Aunt Annie was in the Conservative Club. My cousin Vincent wanted to be a policeman. My cousin Patrick had the dream of following his father into the same regiment and fighting for Queen and Country. These are the people who the police arrested and then fabricated the forensics against them. Come Thursday, the 5th of December, when they charged me, I was represented by the biggest law firm in London, Simon Muirhead and Allen from Covent Garden. And they sent me a guy called David Walsh, who was an out-of-work actor between jobs. We had just been arrested for the 2nd worst bombing in England, and they sent me an out-of-work actor. This was a frame-up from day one. I was too frightened to understand it at that time. And when they charged me and took me to Ward Street Court in Guildford, where at the top of the street was the Horse and Groom pub that the IRA had bombed and killed 5 people. There was crowds there, with nooses and rocks and rotten vegetables and eggs attacking the van, wanting to drag us out and lynch us in the street. So by the time they got me to Winchester Prison, I was never so relieved in my life to be out of the police stations, because I thought they were going to kill me in there. They were behaving like madmen. I was walking around the exercise yard after being on remand for a week in Winchester, and I thought, I'm going insane, because I could hear my father's voice, very faint. And I thought he was back home in Ireland. And I remember as we got close to the hospital part of the exercise yard, his voice got louder. And I looked up and I seen him at the window in grey and blue striped pajamas, like the Nazis did with the people they had in concentration camps. There was my father. He'd come over to get me a lawyer, been arrested, been charged. Anyway, we spent a year on remand and we went to court. And our trial started on the 16th of September 1975. And it finished on Wednesday, the 22nd of October 1975. And the judge who tried us did everything possible to facilitate the liars, the perjurers, the fabricators of evidence in convincing the jury. But he also had the press working for them outside, the government behind it. This was fit up from day one. And at the end of a 6-week trial, we were found guilty. And before he sentenced us, he said he wanted to know from the Home Secretary whether proper sentence was no longer on the statute book, capital punishment. And he pointed his finger at us, Paddy Armstrong, Paul Hill, Carl Richardson, myself, and he said I would have no hesitation in executing you. And with that, we were sent to prison. And I arrived at Wandsworth Prison about 20 to 4 on Wednesday afternoon. And anybody who's been to prison knows the reception area is a hive of activity. People are doing deals, making alliances, trading stuff. And when I walked in, it went absolutely silent. And they frog marched me up to the reception screws desk where they stripped me naked, started screaming at me, tearing up letters, tearing up photographs, emptying out tobacco, squirting away shampoo. And they got the bath orderly and they said, run him a special. 5-6 minutes later, me standing there naked being abused, I was hauled off to the bath area. And they put me into a bath with blocks of ice, freezing cold water. And they started lifting me by the hair and submerging me. We call that waterboarding. I call it attempted murder. I went back to the reception area. They asked me what size trousers I took. I give them the measurements, 28 leg, 29 leg, 28 waist. They give me a size 38 leg, 38 waist, 33 leg. What size shoes? Size 7. They give me size 11. What size shirt? Size 15. They give me size 19. The process of degrading you and humiliating you and institutionalizing you begun right away. And they placed a bed pack consisting of sheets, a roll on one side of me, a piss pot, a wash-on basin, and a water jug the other side, and told me to pick them up. When I bent down to pick them up, my trousers fell down, and they all started giggling. And then they marched me through the prison. Well, usually when people convicted of IRA offences are brought into a prison, everybody's locked away. They had them all out, and they were throwing their piss pots full of piss and shit over me. And they took me down to subterranean cells in Wandsworth Prison. And for the next 8 weeks to 3 months, they never turned the light on. They kept me in the dark the whole time. And little did I know, although I got a kicking that day, so I should have knew, was that a siege had ended in London in which 4 people had taken over a flat and held hostage a man called John Matthews and his wife Sheila, and it became known as the Balcombe Street siege. And at the end of this siege, the 4 people who were involved, Harry Duggan, Joe O'Connell, Eddie Butler, and Hughie Doherty, were taken to 4 separate police stations around London. And when asked individually, what was the first bombings you did? They said, the first bombings we did, you put innocent people in prison. They had the courage of their convictions. And they stated it quite clear. What did the police do? They hid the evidence. They hid the evidence for 18 months until their trial started. And then they couldn't keep them shut. And just like Brenton Hughes, these were dedicated Republicans, true Republicans. Take responsibility for their actions. It mightn't be nice, but there's a war going on. Things happen. But what they never lost sight of, the courage of their convictions. What they did, they accepted. And it was on the basis of their trial in February of 1977 that we were granted an appeal. We went to the appeal court in September of 77 and had a 6-week appeal. And at the end of the 6-week appeal, the judges Lawton, Roskell and Borum went away They reserve their judgment for 3 weeks.